is happening, everybody? I'm Jon Ryan, my GN, joined by Tom Marks.
Hello.
And I had the super fun privilege to check out a bunch of Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
How many Greeks did you capture with your helmet?
None. I captured no Greeks. I murdered a bunch of them with swords.
Well, that'll do.
But not capturing them with a hat. And it is super interesting. So we can... First up, we're meeting Alexios. He's one of the two new protagonists. The other is Cassandra. No huge differences really between the two of them that I'm aware of, aside from their gender.
And they're not like both characters in the world, like with the previous Assassin's Creed that had the
No,
the
it's
switch,
not
right?
like Evie and Jacob.
Right.
This is a unique thing in Assassin's Creed where you're picking a character of either gender and you're them for the entire game.
Right.
And so, you pick one, or the other, and then from then on, that is just who this person was in history.
Right.
Like Layla Hassan from the first game comes back. Her modern day story continues after the end of Origins, and she finds basically one skeleton, and you just get to choose what that skeleton was.
Right. Kind of a creepy way of putting it, but yes.
What can I say? I'm a sociopath. So here we find ourselves in Greece. It is roughly 430 BC, so about 400 years before the events of Assassin's Creed Origins.
Which is maybe kind of surprising, seeing as Origins was the origin
story.
Yeah,
you'd kind of think that, wouldn't you? But it's not. It is.
So what is the story here, then?
So the story in Assassin's Creed Odyssey is the origins of essentially the conflict, the idea of the conflict between Chaos and Order, Templars, and the Brotherhood that eventually got established in Assassin's Creed Origins.
Right.
So, Origins set up the Brotherhood and the, quote, Assassin's Creed as we know it. This is sort of the kickoff to that whole event.
Gotcha. So we're not going to see any, probably not going to see as much Assassin's imagery, that sort of stuff in this game, because this isn't even dealing with the Assassin's Order or anything like that.
Right. So we definitely get some of the classic imagery. The eagle is still very much a part of it. You're actually, they call you the eagle-bearing Mystios which means you're the mercenary eagle, or the eagle for hire, essentially. So you play as regardless of whoever you pick, you play as this character who is they technically are a Spartan, but they've forsaken their nationality and their birthright heritage and all that. And you play as a mercenary, basically, because you can see we're making questions, or we're not making questions. God, E3 is a very tiring process for all of us. Sorry, everyone. You're getting to choose your answers to questions, and you get to choose paths and branching options in the stories for the first time in an Assassin's Creed game. They're kind of kicking into that notion of it being a real role-playing game. We sort of saw that a little bit in Origins with the skill choices and the trees that you could unlock, but now they're really, really leaning into it, and I think it could be really interesting. What we saw of it in this demo was a lengthy demo, and we get to make a few important choices that did have some unique effects throughout the story that we got to play through.
And so it's interesting because it feels like Origins was almost the entry drug for the RPG elements of Assassin's Creed, and now this is even going farther that direction.
Yeah, and you can see, you can obviously see in a lot of the combat and some of the navigation mechanics, and a lot of stylistically, it's very similar to Origins in the way that it looks and the way that a bunch of its systems operate, and I think that's absolutely for the best. Obviously, I don't think. It's not something that I think we could say we didn't really expect whatever the next Assassin's Creed after Origins was going to be. I don't think they would introduce all these cool new combat systems and essentially this big shift to just a straight up action adventure exploration game coming off of instead of just stealth focused.
Yeah.
And then have it revert back and just automatically go back. Just kidding, everybody. It's not this.
But this isn't even just kind of the next Origins. This is. It goes a step farther.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the logical next step for what the game franchise as a whole could look like.
I think there was a little bit of a concern with some people that, they took a year break from between the Assassin's Creeds, they revamped everything, they reduxed the formula with Origins, and now we're just going to get Origins again every year. Is kind of the fear, and this seems like that's not quite what they're doing. They are still changing things.
Definitely, very much so. Obviously I can't speak to whatever the next one's going to be, because this one isn't even out yet. But I mean, this definitely takes sort of the really good kernels of ideas that they sort of started and posited in Origins, and take those and add their own stuff to it, and they sort of elevate them a little bit. So, for example, all the way back to what we were talking about a hot second ago, like adding those RPG mechanics and those choices to it, I chose for my demo to play as Alexios. Like they're sort of taking that beyond just like the small individual story of Alexios or Cassandra, but also to the bigger world as a whole, allowing you to, kind of lean into that mercenary role, and you can choose which side of the Peloponnesian War, which is when this is set. You can choose who you want to fight for. So whether you want to fight for Athens or if you want to fight for the Spartans, you can sort of go to each area. Like this is the island of Delos and Mykonos. And for our demo, we played for the Spartans, but you could theoretically go there and be like, hey, Athenians, what's up? Let me crush this rebellion for you.
But your character is originally from Sparta.
Yeah, I mean, it's that thing of like, the personal story is that you were a Spartan, but you sort of have like either lost or forsaken your birthright.
Gotcha.
And now you exist independently of the conflict. But I feel like that's more of a reason for your kick-ass warrior training.
Right. Well, what I was trying to get at is also like, is one of those sides renegade and one of them paragon? Is there very clearly a good guy, bad guy in this situation?
I don't on the like global scale, I'm not sure, because that's kind of the fun thing about the Assassin's Creed games, is kind of getting to sort of peer back into history and be like, oh well, maybe these people who we've written as idealists and rebels and heroes into our history books, like maybe they weren't as cool as we thought. And there are a certain number of historical figures that do pop up in and around this, but like I don't necessarily know if one choice is good and one choice is bad.
Right.
In our demo, clearly the guy who like runs the island of Delos for the Athenians, he's a real bad dude, but that's also like the Athenians probably don't like him a whole lot. He's just clearly like exploiting his connections with them to kind of make everyone else's lives miserable to his own means, to his own ends. But yeah, I mean, so it's cool. I'm really curious to see how that sort of pans out in the broader sense, because the map itself is huge. It's like probably, including all the ocean, because boats are back.
Boats,
yeah, we get our boats back. Because boats are back, it's probably about a third to a half open sea, which I think is super cool. Like I really loved those moments in like Black Flag, for example, or even Assassin's Creed Rogue, when you're just kind of exploring the open ocean and getting into shenanigans with sharks and dolphins. Well, not dolphins in like Rogue, it was too cold, but there are dolphins in this one and they're really cute, and they just fled by our boat, and I'm like, oh my god, because I'm easily distracted by most things.
So it's bringing back some of that Black Flagness, where Origins had very limited kind of structured boat sequences or boat fights, right?
Right, and this is they're referring to it as, quote, seamless naval.
Okay.
Seamless naval combat. It's like the in-studio term for it when they're referring to stuff on spreadsheets and business forums.
But practically what that means is you can be running around on land, jump in a boat, go get in a boat fight, and then get off on a different island.
Yeah, you have your own ship full of warriors who you've sort of hired or convinced to join you. And that's not necessarily just like... It's not like in Black Flag when Edward would take over a ship, you could earn like 2 more notches on the number of guys you have on your crew. Like in this, you actually can like run into characters and, so there was one mission that I had where I had to assassinate 3 captains, and one of them turned out to be a defector. And instead of murdering him, which I super easily could have done, I was like, you know what? No, I wanna keep you around. You seem like a pretty useful and like resourceful guy. So like, come work on my boat as an archer. And so now my boat has a better set of arrows. So
that sounds very RPG.
Oh, it super is. Yeah, they're really leaning into it very hard.
Yeah.
And I'm really interested to see how that works in the broader sense. Like, we saw a few different storylines kind of branch out and then come back together in our little 5-hour demo. And so, it's clear that they really are trying to lean into that notion of like, not only being able to explore history, but really like making it your playground. And it's a really pretty playground at that. But like, look at it though. Like, it's really, really nice looking. Origins was a beautiful game to begin with, but I think like aside from a couple of what I'll call early build hiccups, well, I mean, we're still 6 months out from release. There are a couple of things mostly in like some of the dialogues between characters, like
some of the faces are a little
they're a little stiff.
Yeah,
they're a little stiff. But I think that's easily stuff that can be worked out between now and release. But yeah, aside from that, like I think this is easily, like, hands down the prettiest Assassin's Creed game I've ever seen.
Yeah, as far as I can tell too. Like, not having played it, but just looking, it's fairly clear how gorgeous it is.
Yeah, I mean, like the color palette that they've chosen, like again, this is a very small portion of the map, but like seeing the blues and the reds and the purples and these really, really vibrant colors in what we sort of identify, us living in 2018, we sort of only identify with it as black and white pictures in history books or like white marble statues.
Right.
And there's not many records of like what somebody's actual house looked like in ancient Greece, because a lot of it's either fallen to rubble or it's just like all those giant statues and stuff like that. They were painted and they weren't necessarily just big white rocks.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what other types of environments, because you got to see a sizable amount of it, but even in Origins it went to a lot of different places, a lot of different settings, and I'm really interested to see what else this game has in store. Because just like the desert for 80 hours will get boring if you're just in these beautiful Grecian vistas. Yeah. That's going to get tired.
Look,
too.
These limestone hills are really pretty, but enough of the limestone hills. No, so the map itself is pretty huge. I mean, like I said, it's roughly even though half of it's, or a little bit less than half of it's water, like it is still larger than like Origins, for example. It's the largest game that they've made, they've said. And so I have to imagine that, like, a lot of it is these sort of Grecian islands that are like off the south coast, and that were really, really famous during, the time of Heroes and the Odyssey, and now in the post Age of Heroes, I guess, after the events of like Leonidas at Thermopylae and everything else, which is actually what this story is sort of kickstarted by. So like the conceit for this one is that the piece of Eden in this game is actually a tool of yours, and it is the spear that Leonidas used at the Battle of Thermopylae, at the one that everyone knows from 300.
Right.
But so I'm sure we will get some extra or some additional, environments besides just beautiful limestone, colorful islands.
So there were. It's ancient Greece, but there were some rumors here and there that it might be mythological Greece, or like there might be stuff like that.
Yeah, so I mean, at first I didn't expect there to be a whole bunch of that, and I still don't know like how much we're actually going to see of it. In our demo, you could fight basically this giant ass bear that was Callisto, who's this bear of myth. Like basically she was a nymph who got tricked into getting busy with Zeus, and then Artemis got mad and turned into a bear. Anyways, in this it was less like that. It was more so like the true-to-life version of that, where it's just this big screw-off bear that like ended up on this island because somebody was smuggling him. But so while I initially thought that there wouldn't necessarily be like like a hydra or anything out in the ocean, like one of the screenshots that they released today was just a straight-up Gorgon, like just like Medusa just chilling,
snakehead lady with glowy eyes,
and like she looks badass. I mean, I want to know who does her makeup because she is glowing.
Oh no.
But I'm curious, like, is that something, like, is that like a post-launch thing that we'll see in DLC later, like sort of like the Trials of the Gods that we got for AC Origins?
Yeah.
Or is that, can you just like straight up fight Medusa in the middle of the game now?
They like you said, they played around with that in the DLC for Origins, and I mean, Assassin's Creed has always had a level of gods and myth to it, right, with all the Eden stuff, but it would be interesting to see that done explicitly in the campaign based on this. I mean, we don't know if that's the case, but like this screenshot is, I mean, it's surprising.
Yeah, like it's very much so plausible. Like, and especially too, like, I can see them sort of leaning into that fun-ish side of it. Like, Assassin's Creed used to, I mean, it's not that it's not serious, and it's not that it used to be like dour or anything, but it very much was a series that like took the concept of like exploring history very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And it's cool to see them playing with that if they are.
Right.
I mean, especially sort of like in the winky nods to other media that has kind of explored that stuff in history, like your main ability in combat, one of your main combat abilities is like straight up just like the kick from 300.
Right.
Where you just like wind up and you bash a dude in the chest with your foot and they go sailing back like 15 feet. You can actually see it in this big battle sequence, which is another new thing for the series, I'm pretty sure. These giant, like, massive clashes between forces. So like, because
just a huge scale fight.
Yeah, but so because you're playing as a mercenary, your goal is ultimately to take control of all these different territories. And so you do that by not only like, you know, weakening the infrastructure of whatever side you're trying to antagonize and killing the leaders, but you can also basically, you have like, this is the battle for Delos. Like you rally your forces, you have them confront everybody else. And then, you know, depending on how this plays out, if you win or if you lose, your faction or the enemy faction will get stronger. And they have like each side has like their own heroes and captains and lieutenants and stuff. But so the combat in this is similar in a lot of ways to what was introduced in Origins. It actually improved in my mind it a lot. You know, there's like an AoE attack, which you can use to knock back a bunch of guys. You've got the Spartan kick, which I mentioned a second ago. You've also got like a shield breaker attack, which you'll see a guy coming at you. Like a sword and shield combat was like the mainstay of warfare back in the day when you were on land. You can, you know, rip a guy's shield off away from him, bash him with it, he'll fall back and take some damage. And it's cool because like they've got a bunch of these different abilities that you can upgrade, and you can actually pick and choose which ones you want to have readily available to you in combat. So it's not necessarily like in Origins where you just have these like sort of passive skills, and some of them are active abilities that can get triggered or bonuses to that one super move that you have.
Right.
You're really able to sort of create your own arsenal or create your own combat style. You know, if you want to try and play it sneakier, you know, for big battles like this, you're not really going to be able to be super sneaky. But you can focus more on ranged combat, or you can focus more on up-close melee stuff.
And again, that's another step closer towards just being a straight RPG, is these activatable abilities that you upgrade and go on. Like, the Origins, when I saw the combat in Origins, I was like, oh man, they're kind of taking a lot of inspiration from The Witcher 3, and then I see this with the activatable abilities and these AoE attacks and stuff like that. It's like, oh, they're really, really going down that path now.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that they are. I think it's a smart and fun choice for the franchise. You know, obviously we'll see how it pans out. But based on what I've seen, you know, I'm feeling it. I'm very excited to see what this ends up being like.
Cool.
Cool. So thanks so much for joining us here. Be sure to check out everything else we have on Assassin's Creed Odyssey right here on IGN.